I'm going to start with a big congratulations, as big as, of course, the big gorilla that you had out there. So the event is done, but still, we're still seeing the ripple effect of everything from the industry that is pouring in congratulations to everybody else around. I'm sure you've had your complete share of that. Let's get down to talking about what really happened out here, right? I mean, yes, it became the biggest tech conclave in the country, the most well-attended. No one's ever seen the kind of gate numbers that we have out here. But eventually it became about Corning and the demo and the experiences. So let's talk about that. First and foremost, why did Corning want to associate with an event like this in India?
So it starts with, Rajiv, the essence of our brand. And it comes down to 4 simple words: always tough, always innovating. Okay. And when you think about that, the audience and the people of India need to understand that this company, Corning, has had life-changing innovations for 166 years.
Right.
And starting with the Edison light bulb all the way through optical fiber that transformed the digital revolution, and today to the to Corning Gorilla Glass. And to tell that story to the Indian audience, we needed a framework and a platform that was really compelling and someone that really understood it. And between yourself and NDTV, you were the perfect platform to tell that story to an audience that really we wanted them to understand what Corning was about, and specifically what Gorilla Glass was about.
So if I was to say that if you had a few check boxes that you wanted ticked before this event was done and dusted, it would be that people get familiar with the brand, people get familiar with the technology, the people, and really what Corning stands for, because that really came out from the way John Bain came out, where his entire keynote did not chest thump the brand at all. It's a very refreshing change from normally what a brand keynote is all about. But if I was to say, between what happened on stage, between the keynotes, the panel discussions, and then what happened in the demo area. Did you even make it to the demo
area?
Yeah, I
did, obviously.
Because, no, but it was so crowded that I think if we've had one complaint, and that is, I stood in line or I stood to get in for so long, and I couldn't really get all the experiences. So there are people who almost didn't make it, right? So between all of this, you think the message got delivered, all of it?
I think so. What was remarkable is 2 really incredible anecdotes out of this whole experience. The first was from the demo teams that were in the booth, and they'd been up there for about 6 hours, which is a long time to be doing demos. And when I went back to talk to them in the evening, they were ready to go for another 6, if I may say so. So what their reaction was, look, the youth of India was so excited, and the point that they made to me was that the questions that were coming in were so invigorating. I mean, you can't test an event with reactions until you see how excited and refreshed the people were after 6 hours. I don't know how else to describe an event that's gone that well. The second part, I think, for me, which was really compelling, was at the end of the day, we'd given away a high-end smartphone at the end of the day, and this young woman had won it. She had actually left the venue, gone back to her school. She came back when she heard that she won, and heard the sheer joy in her face. I think that capped a really beautiful day. I think it was an incredibly intellectually challenging day for everybody. You had great topics. I think our keynotes went pretty well, but then that was sort of like, okay, we've ended the day on a wonderful note.
Right. Can I add an anecdote to that?
Yeah, please.
I had multiple people coming up to me and saying, what we found the most interesting is that we touch and feel the glass of our phone every day. We hear about the Corning Gorilla Glass as a brand almost every day because they would have it on their phone. We never realized both the technology and what it really makes to make this miracle happen, that there can be glass on a phone that is that tough, right? So when they were able to go into the demo areas and experience it, I think it just kind of changed the psychology of how they look at glass. I'm sure every person out there, when they'll touch their phone the next time, they'll appreciate it a little bit more as to what all goes into making that particular product. So I think you're totally right about that. So what do you think, with such a large number of people, and let me just define that large number of people live out there, large number of people watching it on TV because it got telecast on NDTV all through, large number of people who watched online, it went all over the world at the same time, and we had a huge amount of viewership from all over the world. What do you think would be the one message that everyone got about the brand that you believe is an important one at the end of it all?
I always keep coming back to our 4 words, right? It's always tough, always innovating, that you have the world that you're interacting with today is through glass, because you touch and you swipe and you interact with glass. And Corning Gorilla Glass has been driving for and will continue to strive for being that durable cover glass that is on your phone. and your device. So as you start to move forward and you start to consider a device, having this technology available to you, broadly available to you, is something that we would love to see. And I think the message that Corning is focused on constantly innovating, both with the way we deliver the product and also the mechanism by which we communicate to our consumers. So for example, the Tech Conclave is one, and the tools that we use to talk to you will always follow through that essence, because the essence of a brand starts with its personality. And if you're true to it, you'll always project the right thing forward.
Okay. So let's now talk about Corning, the brand, and India. There'll be millions of people that actually use your product, touch it every day, feel that technology within their fingers and underneath their hand, but will never really know it's Corning because they haven't yet understood the brand promise or the name of the brand, right? There'll be those who absolutely understand it. How do you think about Corning, the brand, in India? Do you think you've done enough for people to know? It's not so important, I think, for you, for people to only understand Corning, the brand, but also understand the ethos and the halo of what they get from the brand, right? So do you think enough people in India understand the Corning brand? Do you think there will be a time where people will walk into a store and actually say, show me only phones with Corning Gorilla Glass on it? Could that be a USP? Can that become a buying criteria for you in India?
That's always an aspirational goal for every brand, isn't it? The goal is to be that ubiquitous. It is a journey, and the process of building the brand in India has been a journey. I think it starts from the underpinnings of how we build the brand anywhere in the world. It starts with a value proposition. Are you addressing a problem that the consumers care about? And I think you've articulated it really well, that we are trying to solve a very relevant, pertinent problem where people are spending a lot of money to repair their screens when they break. So when we build the brand, we start with the technical underpinnings. What is the value proposition? How do we communicate it? I'll give you an illustrative example. So when we started Gorilla Glass, we started with the message of damage-resistant glass. Well, that's interesting, but that's not interesting to 90% of the world. That's not, that doesn't relate to technology. So we tried to bring it alive with the term tough yet beautiful, tough yet elegant. It took glass and the beauty of glass, the durability of it, and brought it out. So it's a layered approach, and then we start to get into how do you communicate that value proposition and tell the story. And part of that is our relationship. Again, I keep coming back to it, NDTV, working with you through your medium. It's also been about little things like our website. So when, being born and brought up in India, it allowed me to, when we first entered the country, to think about, look, if I'm going to put a website in India, it seems like a trivial thing, but that website has to be architected thinking about the villages.
Correct.
And the feature phones all the way through into a high-end smartphone. And the funny thing that happened is I brought in actually a global website guy into India because I wanted him to see what it felt like when he held that phone in his hand and he had to load that site. What's happened, and it's actually late breaking, is that we implemented that in India, but it's so elegant, we're now starting to deploy a portion of it across the world, right?
Great.
Because the thing that we have on there is called, is it on yours? It's your ability to determine if your phone has Corning Gorilla Glass on it. That's the mechanism, and it's a process by which we're learning and we're adapting, and that's how it's, again, I almost sound like it's trite, but it's always tough, always innovating, because you have to have that in your DNA. And the brand mechanisms are exactly about that. So it's a process of building that in India, and we want to continue to do that, and it's a journey. And it's a journey that is...
That's very interesting what you speak about. You also have done, and of course, I think the big advantage is that you're from here, from this country. You understand both the people, the character, and the market, right? But I was also very intrigued to see some of the films that you've done on the Dabbawalas, on the goat farming that is done for the shawls. Very interesting, very, very focused, almost tunnel vision with what we would very quickly relate with. But the question that comes is that while you're doing all of this, a large part of the market, which is the premium and high-end, already pretty much almost has 100% Corning Gorilla Glass. And then you have a mid to an economy market which may or may not have it 100% but has a large percentage of it. Is this important to you that people should actually know, like you said on the website, is it on yours? So once a person does look at it, and if it doesn't have it or does have it, is it supposed to be feeling proud of the ownership that you have something, or feeling bad that you don't have it? What's the purpose once you identify with the brand, you identify with the fact that you're looking at the Indian market in a very focused way? What do you achieve with that?
So at the end of the day, it is very much an ingredient brand. And the goal is that if you don't have a device that has Gorilla Glass on it, hopefully you are going to aspire to have one. Okay. And those that do have it, you understand the value that it's bringing to you. The videos, for example, I think you alluded to both the Dabbawala video and the Pashmina Goat project. They were born out of a gestation of a concept. So I believe that the thing that unites the world are two main things, music and the human spirit.
Okay.
And if you take those two factors, how do you create a set of assets that can get people to relate to the content and therefore to your brand and your product in a seamless but elegant way without being in their face about it? Mm-hmm. So the entire Incredibly Tough video series of incredibly tough people doing incredibly tough things with incredibly tough devices, and capturing that incredible human spirit that's there everywhere around us. You turn around, you look around us, people are doing amazing things, and you don't have to be a child prodigy or a super athlete to accomplish these things. Mm-hmm. And the Dabbawala is a prime example of it. You look at the day in the life of a Dabbawala, it's hard stuff, right? And putting that video out was a way to get people to understand that, look, you know, there's this thing called Corning Gorilla Glass. It's in your life. It's there with you everywhere. And you can go about your day. You can go about a fairly exciting day, and the product, the brand, and the phone is with you. And that was the whole mission of the video series that we put together, and that's kind of how we try to approach each market, is trying to connect the core asset, the core story with the audience, and then let them find us and work with us through the journey.
Okay. Once you discovered and you thought this is what the Indian market is, they say that the Indian market can surprise anybody. Whatever you may work for it, whatever you may bake for it, eventually it has a tempo and a beat of its own.
Very
right?
much so.
What's the learning that you've had where you thought the market is this, you know your market because it's your country, and it's actually taught you lessons that you'd never thought before? Other things that came out of the Indian market, you've told me a great example of how the website, which was created for India, could now be utilized in many other parts of the world. That's a great India learning that actually goes global. What are the other things that we, the Indians, have taught you?
Well, I'll tell you one that surprised me, and then the other learning that I've had coming through this. I think the thing that, actually the Conclave was a big surprise for me. The sheer volume of kids, the youth of India that were there, and their sheer reaction and the questions that came out were stunning. So just sitting there, I mean, again, having grown up here, I've lived in the States now for the better part of 20 years. It was actually heartwarming to see it, right? Just the sheer energy of these kids, and that was exciting because when you have an audience that's resonating with your language and your message, mm-hmm. that's something worth, you know, it's worth aspiring for and continuing to strive for. That got reflected actually in a very interesting way. We measure a lot of our brand progress in India through an online study called Taluna. Mm-hmm. And I was pretty surprised with some results that just came out. Of those people aware of Corning Gorilla Glass online, so it's the online population, over 90% of them want that glass on their art glass on their next device. Okay. So that's a surprise, right? The learning was, you know, we're talking to an audience that really understands and wants to understand technology. The surprise was it's resonating.
No, I think that's great. The youth of India, the passion for technology, the passion for the next big thing, the passion to understand, I use this, but what is it that I use, I think is something that I see every single day of my life. I'm glad that, you know, that got projected down to you also. My final question really now is all about, we saw a lot from John that took us through the various generations and ages of technology, networking, how we've come now to this particular age, to a lot of other things, a day in the life of glass, a lot of other things that really happened. A lot was spoken about the future of glass, right? And of course I know that from the next generation of Corning Gorilla Glass 6 and everything else that will come about, we in India will also get to see it simultaneously because we are the most exciting market for mobile phones. But an interesting part of what we saw also was that the brand now gets associated with many other things than just mobile phones. Do you truly believe that in India also we will see Corning Gorilla Glass on mobile phones, on tablets, on laptops, and all the other things that were spoken about, from cars and automobiles to, you know, architecture and everything else? Is India ready for it all?
I think It's a matter of how technology gets adopted in each of the markets. And India is going through the massive adoption of handheld phones right now, and I think that's why the brand is it's the perfect time to have the brand present in India right now. As you can see, a lot of the mobile phone companies, everybody's excited about being in India. I can't comment on what will happen in the future because I can't begin to project how fast some of these technologies are going to adopt. But you know, back to one of the points that John made is the rate of adoption, the gap between the developed world and the developing world has completely closed. I mean, we're effectively at the same rate. But some of the newer innovations around automation of vehicles, there's a huge infrastructure question. I can't even begin to comment on it. I think the more exciting part is the brand is here today, the framework's here. We've started to get some traction. We're excited about being here, and we want to continue to deliver that here in a very coherent way.
Okay. So my last question needs you to take your Corning hat off and only wear the personal hat, and that is from everything that's happening in the world of glass, right? From the futuristic stuff that we see to the fact that almost everything in the future seems to be more transparent, more see-through than ever before. What personally is exciting you the most? What is it that really blows your mind? Because you see this very closely, very differently from maybe the rest of us. What personally is exciting you the most?
So I'll actually tell, it's connected to what's happened in the smartphone industry. I was kind of trying to recall a little bit about how we've gone about the brand in the last 7 years. And when we look at the world of smartphones, we're looking at the world of hardware and devices changing over the last 7 years. But if you think about what's happened in the wake of those devices changing, the way we communicate, the way we interact, the way we process information, our psychology around information, the way content's delivered, consumed, all of this has transformed in 7 years. And that is a remarkable thing happening for us in the world of communications and media, and trying to tap into that and harness it is a really exciting problem. Okay. And again, I come back to, you have to be innovative in that world to get your message out, and that's fascinating because I think that's an interesting dynamic where technology and our lives are intersecting in a very, very unique way. And from a brand perspective, that just gives us a really broad palette. It's a really fun, exciting time to be working on it.
Great. So congratulations again on an incredible event. More importantly, on how Corning is truly taking India, which we believe is the most exciting market for all of this. Corning as a brand is taking this very seriously. We hope to see a lot more innovation coming in right here in India and maybe even from India. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajiv. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Now let's come to the experience of actually listening to sound. That is where we keep on trying to push the bar. It used to be stereo sound and surround sound and Atmos, and who knows what we are coming to next. What are we coming to next?
So just to talk about, I think, the perspectives that, Rasool, Ishan, and KJ talked about, I think from Dolby perspective, and we have a rich heritage of innovation around sound technology, we think of three key things around this issue. I think the number one for us is artistic intent. The intent that a content creator has, how do you preserve and how do you get that across without the least amount of, artifacts or, from a technical perspective in the most pristine quality.
Now, 30 years ago, experience used to be a single radio which you used to switch on. You had to hear whatever people were putting out. Then it became the CD, and now, of course, it's Pandora, Spotify, all sorts of different ways of being done. How has technology really changed the experience, and it's continuing to do so?
I think it's changed monumentally because, first of all, you have to understand that for so many years, maybe 2 or 3 decades now, since the beginning of time and the beginning of surround sound in terms of time, we have been used to hearing sound in the X-axis, which means that anybody who owned a 5.1 channel home theater or any sort of speaker system, they were all always in the X-axis, which is in front of you or side of you or behind you. It's only now with the advent of Dolby Atmos and maybe other competing formats for immersive sound, we are hearing sound for the very first time on the Y-axis, which means we are hearing sound from above us.
But are you increasingly finding, as he's saying, you can't replicate in live music what somebody is hearing at home because there's so many aspects of post-production that go into it?
See, I think artificial intelligence can replace everything except the human intent, So the same thing we deal with when in reproduction. So people come to a theater to watch film. The experience of filmmaking is watching picture and sound.
Yeah.
What is the technical standard to follow in that particular, within that spectrum? That's not been, stipulated. So it is a field where like the business dictate what it wants to do, So however good you do a mix, or however good you create, trying to create an emotional experience, how it is reaching to an audience is a huge issue as far as I am concerned. Yeah. I don't see that problem with a writer. I don't see that problem with a painter or a musician, for me, for example, to a certain extent.